Hi, Zandy. For those of you who are actively responsible for leading projects, you likely know about the Project Management Institute and their global, enduring commitment to advancing the project management profession. Well, each year, PMI publishes their Pulse of the Profession. It's an annual thought leadership report that charts the latest trends and developments in the project management space to help us all work smarter. It features feedback and insights from project professionals and senior executives and project management leaders from a wide range of industries across the world. And PMI recently reached out to offer a guest to share perspectives on the most recent Pulse of the Profession. And I'm glad to welcome Karla Eidem, who joins us to talk about the 2024 15th edition. Karla is the Regional Managing Director, North America at Project Management Institute. And beyond her responsibilities at PMI, she's been a project practitioner as well. And so I think she really brings a unique perspective of the latest trends. And I just really look forward to sharing those with you today. A quick note, I want to invite you to join our Lead 52 family. It's a global group of leaders who are committed to transforming our ability to lead and deliver. It's 52 weeks of leadership learning delivered right to your inbox, taking less than 5 minutes a week. It's all for free. Learn more and sign up at getlead52.com. Thanks. Let's jump into today's discussion with Karla about the most recent edition of the Pulse of the Profession. Karla, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
Thanks, Andy. I'm so excited to be here. I appreciate you extending the invitation.
Yeah, well, since you're not just associated with PMI, but also a practitioner for years now, how have you seen the role of project managers evolve over the years that you've been doing this?
You're absolutely right. Actually, I can say that my heart beats twice as fast being a practitioner and now working for PMI. And I started my career actually 2005 in project management. And so I have been in this profession for quite a while. And I've definitely seen firsthand, the evolution and the changes that impacted this profession and the role that we play. And as you know, the criticality of projects in our world today, we need project managers and the skills to drive important change in our world. And what I've seen so far is that the role of the PMs has definitely shifted away from executing the technical aspects of a project to a strategic partner in the organization who can align projects and outcomes with overall strategy and goals. So what that means really is that project managers need a broader skill set to include not only that technical side or in the PMI talent triangle, what we call the ways of working, but also business acumen and power skills. The soft skills, the people skills, collaboration, communication, and all of those important components in ensuring project success. So what I've seen really is that project managers must also be adaptable and resilient to the ever-changing business environment and be very competent in risk management. I mean, risks just pop up everywhere and you got to be ready. And you need to know how to mitigate, to avoid, or maybe sometimes even absorb that risk. But that's definitely a factor you should factor in into your planning and into your managing the projects. Coming from the profession, I've been in banking, so financial services, healthcare, and nonprofit. And what I've also seen is that the PMs today no longer specialize in a particular methodology. And rather, what's more important is a broader understanding of all the methodologies available to them and are able to apply the right approach or approaches to the project at hand, right approach at the right time. Well, a good project manager, as I always told my team before, should know which tools to pull from their PM toolbox, almost like a mechanic knowing what to do. If, would you use a screwdriver to pound on a nail? Maybe you can, but it would be.
I've done it before.
I'm sure you have. But what would be more effective or less effort? Right. Maybe try a hammer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's actually build on that because I feel, Karla, like there was a time when you were either part of the agile team or the non-agile team, right? Like there was a time where it wasn't like what you're saying of you have a set of tools available to you. You were kind of in one camp or the other. But, you know, in the context of the latest pulse of the profession, what have you found about hybrid and agile approaches, and how do you personally try to decide when you're in that? Do I use the screwdriver or the hammer? You know, one approach over another.
Or maybe something else, right? Maybe a
Right. Yeah. Right.
combination.
Right.
But you're
Right.
absolutely right. When I started in my career, I was on the predictive camp,
Mhm.
which is the waterfall camp, right? I think in my organization at that point, we were certainly using that methodology. And even if Agile was already present in the 2000s, you know, in the last how many 20 plus years, our organization was not quite ready to jump into that. And so, from a practice perspective, I can certainly say I did most of my projects using that approach. However, throughout my career, I've learned to use whether agile or even hybrid. And what the recent pulse of the profession is saying is that a hybrid approach is actually gaining ground as the fit for purpose approach. So another name for the pick the right tool for your problem, right? Right tool from the toolbox. And that the winning blend of agile and predictive looks different for each organization. I think I just mentioned that in my own experience. And that many projects and programs cannot be managed solely using either end of the spectrum. It's like that pendulum swing sometimes where
Right.
we think, oh, you either need to be this or that. And what's really important and critical to project success is that flexibility or the tailoring, the ability to tailor to ensure that you have the right approach for the type of project that you are managing. And in this report, we are saying that there's a steady increase in the use of hybrid approaches, up 57% since 2020, and that more than 70% of project managers expect their organization's usage of hybrid approaches to increase over the next 5 years. And from an agile perspective, the use of that is 6%, increase from 2020. But the change has been very minimal over the last 2 years. And in fact, it dropped 8.8% from 2022 to 2023. And then when it comes to performance levels, what we found is that they are actually comparable. It doesn't matter what you use, agile or hybrid or predictive approaches. They're between hybrid was at 75.4% project performance rate, agile was 74.6%, and predictive yields 74.4%. So just that those numbers can tell you that there's not a very big difference depending on the approach that you have, not very much at least. And that focusing on project management approach alone, well, yeah, will yield minimal additional gains. So what we really need as project professionals is to master a combination of skills and competencies along with the right culture, mindset, and work environment for increased project performance. So that's what we found on the pulse of the profession. But for me personally, because I know you asked that, like what do I consider? I usually in my career I've used a few categories to guide my decision making, and I can share maybe a few things. I have to think about what are we trying to achieve or the project deliverable. I need to assess the risks, the culture, the organizational culture, and the people. For example, when starting a project, I make that assessment or ask myself, well, is the product or the deliverable or what we're trying to achieve well defined? If it's clear where we're going, then maybe I can use predictive or waterfall and front load the planning. But if we're unsure on how that deliverable will be rolled out, then maybe Agile would be more suitable because you can have that iterative approach. And then for hybrid, it comes into play if maybe the deliverable isn't clear, but the organization or the project team is not quite ready to use a full agile approach. And that's where I make my determination. You know, it's not a one size fits all. And like I said, risk is also a huge consideration in asking myself, well, will it really have better results if we do it this versus that? You know, if it's sprints versus front loading the planning, or or do both, a combination of both. And then lastly, on the culture and people, they play a big role because if the organization is not ready for a specific methodology, or your organization has been winning using one approach over the other, then why force them to use one thing? And if the project teams are not trained or not familiar with the approach, it can certainly result to frustration. And I've seen that where, a project manager comes in and dictates, okay, now we will do this
Right.
versus this. And the P in project management, of course, it stands for project. I really think the capital P there is people.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so true. I've seen so many skeletons on the path of people saying, we're going to go all this, right? And it seems like the findings that you surface in the pulse of the profession of what's the need, what's the situation, what's our culture, what's the best fit. And I find there's plenty of people in our project management classes, Karla, that go, man, this seems almost like a leadership class than a project management class. And that's a good thing, right? Because so much is leadership.
Hmm.
And sometimes people go through our agile class, they go, I don't need to go agile. I can use some of those ideas on any sort of project, right? So I love how it seems to be this growing awareness that you're not just one or this, right? There's ways to
Hmm.
combine all of that. And that's reflected in the pulse, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that observation because you're absolutely right. I think that's why I touched on the talent triangle earlier because the
Right.
power skills, that's where you show your leadership, right? I think
Yeah, right.
it shouldn't be again that pendulum swing of one or the other. You can find the right balance in the middle if needed.
Mhm. Certainly there's the approaches, but there's also kind of the work arrangements these days. And I'm certainly seeing more people working on site than a few years ago. Still a lot of people virtual, almost everybody I find to some degree hybrid in their arrangement.
Hmm.
How would you summarize the latest findings about how different work arrangements impact team collaboration and, let's say, project performance?
Yeah, it's very very interesting because we were also seeing the shift in some organizations pushing for more in-person work.
Right,
But still, approximately 61% of project professionals work remotely. Well, at least some of the time, kind of like how you
right,
described with hybrid.
right.
And 4 out of 5 employees who have worked in flexible work models over the past 2 years, they want to retain that same model. But as you know, there are industries where these findings differ. For example, in construction and manufacturing, well, project managers are most likely to work entirely in person, right? I mean, you got to see what you're
Mhm.
doing and
Right.
how the building is being built. But again, it is important to choose the right model that will yield the best results. Again, this is another case of not one or the other. And personally, I can share with you that I came from healthcare actually before I came to PMI. And as a project manager, I can certainly do most of my work remotely because we had hospitals and team members across multiple states. But there were still instances where I had to be on site and be at the hospital to do the project work that is critical or needed. For example, I was actually leading the COVID-19 vaccine implementation. And when we designed the flow of the patients or how they go from beginning to end, we did create the process maps. We had documentation, we had layouts, and even pictures of the actual building that we will be administering the vaccines. But it was equally important to see the actual flow of the patients, how they moved from one area to the next, so that we can identify any potential issues with the flow and of course I can course correct as needed. So there is that, like that combination again of being hybrid. But our research found that unfortunately there are some inequities in how leaders perceive the effectiveness of remote work.
Mm.
Some senior leaders are less likely than project managers to say remote work is more effective than in-person work. This perception could be due to fear of decreased productivity. But interestingly, our research shows that work location does not have a negative impact on project
Mm.
performance. And in fact, project performance rates for in-person, hybrid, and remote work actually yield similar results. It's about 73 to 74.6%. And this is true even regardless of the project management approach. So leaders should consider empowering teams to choose the right way of working and think beyond traditional office-centric models because we have technology now too that allow many professionals to be productive anywhere.
That's so true. If there's anything that was good out of COVID, the collaborative tools just got so much better, right? So I
Absolutely.
mean, I'm about 50% face to face with groups doing training and 50% virtual. What's your percentage? It depends on the week, but how are you personally as far as on site versus virtual? How's that work for you?
Oh, I work fully remote.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I went the whole thing. I went
yeah,
in
yeah,
person totally, for how many
yeah,
years, and then I went hybrid.
yeah.
Some of us are in the office, and then we have members that are in other states or in other
Mhm,
facilities. But now I work fully remote. So
mhm.
I've done all three
Right. Yeah.
in my career. And what I found too is that and I personally agree with the research actually, and I was not even
Mhm,
surprised because even in the different models that I've been in, the success of the projects that we had it was not impacted negatively,
mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think sometimes we also forget to talk about the hybrid model where if you're in person and then you have project teams that are remote, there are certain ways to ensure that your project meetings are productive. And case in
Mhm,
point, I'll just share this one quick story with you,
mhm.
is that I had a project team member before that does not believe in hybrid and need to be in person, et cetera. And so I tried to listen to, what's causing this issue. Why are we not seeing the value of that? And what I came to realize is that because it's just a lack of experience
Mm.
of doing so. And so I offered my own experience that, you know what, I actually did my projects for the last 2 years in hybrid mode, and these are some of the steps that I took to ensure that everybody's being heard. And because he had concerns, well, the people in the office, they have laptops on and not paying attention, but
Mm.
those that are on call, they don't show their video. Who knows what they're doing? So I get it, right? But there are certain rules of the road that you can establish and set the expectations at the beginning. And so I just shared some tips and tricks there to make sure that if we say we're going on a break, we honor the break times because it doesn't matter if some people are already in the room. You don't want those online missing the opportunity to be part of the conversation. So
Yeah.
I think just in my personal experience, I've seen that shift. And so I was actually, it made me smile a little bit just thinking
Mhm.
back on my own experience when I was reading the report.
Yeah, I really appreciate how you share that. I do enjoy the relationship building aspect of when you're face to face, but you can do some of that remotely too, right? So
Hmm.
I love the fact that you can tap into skill sets and talent in wider geographic areas. You know that you can do that if you go more hybrid. Like you get to live where you live because of the nature of your work. So a lot of interesting trade offs, but it's cool that the research is backing up that you don't
Hmm.
have to sacrifice performance if you do this. That's great. What would you say are some of the key enablers that the pulse of the profession identifies as leading to higher project performance? And I'm wondering if any of those resonate with you most as in your experience of leading projects.
Yeah, in the pulse of the profession, senior leaders reported that their teams need new skills for the evolving work environment, and that 64% need new or different technical skills, and 61% power skills, and 54% business acumen skills. And organizations really need to provide critical enablers to help teams become more empowered, build new skills, whether it's reskilling or upskilling, nurture culture and resilience, and practice a continuous learning attitude. And organizations that offer at least three enablers, supportive programs such as mentoring, training, communities of practice, and mental health resources, they demonstrate project performance 8.3 percentage points higher
Hmm,
than those that offer no such enablers.
that's interesting.
And to me personally, I think the community it just gives you that sense of belonging. I mean, imagine talking to project professionals that speak the same language and being on the same boat as you are. You're trying to solve the same problems, or you're trying to come up with creative solutions. I think that it does bring that feeling of, well, I belong. These are my people. This is my tribe, right? And that's why I think this is where the PMI and the local chapters, for example, which I have here in South Dakota, I am part of that community, and I can speak about some of the challenges I may be experiencing with my projects, or maybe even gain new insights. And mentoring also resonate well with me because it's very critical regardless of your stage in your career. It doesn't matter whether you're an aspiring project professionals or you have 20 years of experience, and it's not just one way. You don't need to just be a mentor if you're experienced. You could also be a mentee.
Mhm.
And you'll surprise yourself with all the things that you'll learn in either roles.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I appreciate how you share that. When I read through the Pulse, I was a little surprised there wasn't more mention about AI, and that might be just a matter of the window and cycles of developing the Pulse because it's an annual report. But there are all kinds of predictions about how AI is going to,
Mhm.
impact project management in the long term. So I'm curious of how you are personally using AI, Karla, and how you anticipate it's going to impact project managers in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, AI is absolutely transforming our world. And while the Pulse of the Profession report focused more on ways of working and work arrangements, PMI is very passionate about supporting the profession in harnessing the power of AI in projects. And I know that many people got nervous in 2019 when Gartner reported that by 2030, 80% of project management tasks will be completed by AI. But this is not something to be afraid of, but I see it more as an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And AI can help augment and assist project leaders in their work, and even automate low complexity tasks like scheduling and summarizing meeting minutes. Like we use Microsoft Teams and there's Assembly that can capture the minutes, but at the end of the day, I still need to fact check, right? I mean, there's that human element or the human in the loop that needs to be included and considered, making sure that what you're producing is correct and valid and it has the right components. But it makes things definitely faster and easier because with all of these low complexity tasks being automated or augmented in some way, now project managers can focus their time and energy on more complex strategic project work that requires that human touch. Those conversations that you're having with your stakeholders, you can't really automate that, right? That's the brainstorming. You can have some tools to help you start it, but to really lead the discussion, that's where the project managers come into play. And so the need for upskilling is definitely urgent. PMI data shows that 21% of project managers always use AI. So only 21%. And on the flip side, 49% of project managers have little or no experience or no understanding of AI in the context of project management. And we do have our AI thought leadership within PMI, and we do have all sorts of resources, which I can touch on later. But again, that just tells you that there is a need for upskilling. This is something that we need to put. It's another tool in the toolbox that you need to put as a project practitioner. And a recent PMI report cites that an onslaught of AI projects is increasing the demand for project managers in the US.
Mm.
And we have many resources available here at PMI, including PMI Infinity. It's a project management AI co-pilot. I call it my buddy. And I wish we had that when I was starting my career.
Yeah.
I bounce back ideas. I check vetted content. It has PMI proprietary content. So you can be sure that it is something that is vetted. And we also have AI learning courses. We have 2 now and more to come. And of course, thought leadership. There is one that we recently produced about prompt engineering. Like if you don't even know where to start at work, what question to ask, which oftentimes I hear that that's the scariest part. Like, how do I even do this? Or what do I even say? That prompt engineering thought leadership that came out of PMI recently, that's a good place to start because it gives you exact examples of statements that you can even use to start your journey. And as for me, well, I already mentioned some of the tools I use at work. But one thing that I love about PMI Infinity is that it's not only that I ask the project questions and then it gives the answers that are PMI content, but it also has at the bottom some suggestions on what additional sources I can check out. And it makes it easy because the link is there. So I don't need to log out and open a new browser. I can just click and then go, and it gives me like additional things to think about. But on the fun side, I would say I use ChatGPT to recommend travel itineraries as a starting point. My family is going on a multi-city trip, and my family is having different requirements, and so I just plugged it in, a 3-day itinerary for this and that, and that was a great starting point. So many apps these days have that AI tool embedded on the app, and so I just take advantage of that. And I think like anything, the more you use it, the more you learn, and the more you get good at it.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. And actually, the Pulse of the Profession really encourages us to just maintain this thirst for continual learning, right? And to keep adapting to new challenges. So I'm just curious, just because, I mean, you're so busy, Karla. Like, how do you keep learning despite that busy schedule? And maybe there's some resources you could share with us that PMI offers that listeners aren't aware of.
Yeah, well, adaptability and resiliency are kind of the name of the game in the business right now, and they're the key for the PM toolbox. And those that know how to navigate complexity or volatility and risk have a competitive edge. And for me, I firmly believe that we all need to be a student of our own profession.
Hmm.
So I put priority and focus on my own upskilling and reskilling. And I put that on my calendar. I manage my own learning like I manage a project. And there needs to be intentionality about it. Everybody, at least the people that I talk to, they want to learn more, they want to do more. But if there's no intentionality and you're not embedding it in your own process, then it doesn't happen. Right. So and I'm a PMP, so I'm a certified project management professional. And the PDUs or the professional development units that I need, I see that not just a checkbox. It's not about just checking how many I've done, but I carefully choose which ones I need to learn for a particular period that would definitely supplement the skills and the knowledge that I have, or even sometimes fill the gap. And like I said, it's like managing, your career, like you're managing a project. And so finding time is one of the key, and putting it in your process in your own calendar. But I can share too that not just me. According to the World Economic Forum, half of all employees worldwide will need to upskill and reskill by 2025 to meet new responsibilities caused by automation and new technologies. And that's where PMI can definitely help and offer some resources. And if you're a member of PMI, you have access to PMI Infinity, which I talked about. It's free. It comes with your membership. You can certainly start asking the questions or gaining the content that you need to manage your projects well. You get a free download of the PMBOK guide or the Project Management Book of Knowledge. Aside from discounts and certifications and learning, this is one thing that I've been hearing that is people might not be familiar, but with your membership, you get access to over 1,700 publications like Harvard Business Review or Forbes and Bloomberg, and that's through our Business Reading Center. So there is really a lot of opportunities to learn and benefits to take advantage of with your membership. But we also have some events, virtual and in-person events. And in fact, we're going to have our global summit, which is the in-person event for project professionals. I think this is where I hope to see all of the project professionals in one place, but let's see if the venue can accommodate. But that's happening in September 18th to the 21st in Los Angeles. So that's another opportunity to learn and network and meet with other project professionals. And I mentioned earlier, there are AI courses to take. And lastly, certifications for PMs across their journeys. So there's the CAPM, which is a good starting point if you're entering the profession or just wanting to be a project manager in whichever role that you may be in. And of course, the PMP, and we have other certifications.
It's so much, right? And I've been to global summits before, and it is so inspiring. It's just so much energy and great sessions, and it's just inspiring. You just realize sometimes I think project managers feel like they're on their own, and so you
Mm-hmm.
get to see globally how to deal with it. And, so many things, Karla, I'd love to talk to you about, but let's end with this. Let's say a listener, they buy into the findings of this report and what we've been discussing, but maybe they feel like their management is not quite as enthusiastic about project management right now. So, any
Mm-hmm.
thoughts about ideas for how we can communicate the value of investing in project management and these enablers to our organizational leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can't just come in and just bring the report and expect them to embrace it, right? I think that's key there. And there's it's one thing to know the value of project management, but it's another thing to demonstrate that value of project management to the organization to show them how it achieves their strategic goals. And that's a good starting point. And this is why project managers or project professionals, we need to be better storytellers.
Mm.
And if we're not able to communicate effectively the value of what we do, then it'll be hard for the leaders of the organizations to even understand why they need to invest in project management. But they know that in this fast changing world, organizations must adapt and they must get the work done better and faster. We hear that all the time. But this is where I truly believe PMs become the catalyst for speed and growth. And project managers have the skills to navigate through complexities and demands of the organization while still leading and motivating a team towards a common goal and getting things done. So there's so many things to highlight. You can't just start talking about statistics and things like that. The report is one resource that's great, right? Because there's research that backs it up. There's data that can help you tell the story. But my first tip is don't just go in there and start talking about the percentages or, the statistics and things like that. But we also know that organizations need forward-looking project professionals to help them become future-proof. And so there's another resource that you can use aside from the pulse of the profession that you can look into, which is the Global Project Management Job Trends Report. And in that report, you'll see the top strategic priorities that were cited by US companies. And there's a common theme there. It's around digitization.
Mm.
And that strategic priorities will embed new technologies in the business model, will need new revenue streams, an operating model, improving resiliency. All the statistics are there, and it came from US companies. So you can use that as an additional resource. But the enablers that we talked about, the coaching, the training, the communities of practice, that's not just for the benefit of the employees. It's a win-win for the employer because there's study too. We had a PMI workplace engagement study where it says that when these needs are not met, which are job fulfillment and professional development, there is an impact to employee retention. So we got to highlight that too, right? It's not just the career of the project professional that is impacted by that, but there's definitely an impact of the organization. But this is where we can also maybe close that conversation if you're, in front of your leaders and maybe help them be more comfortable with these recommendations. You can highlight too that they don't need to do all the work. So even if they don't provide all the formal professional development opportunities and all these enablers, this is actually where PMI can help.
Mm.
They can look to us, organizations like us, for training, for education, and more importantly, for community.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing it. For those listening, this is just a taste of the insights you can get from the latest pulse of the profession, but even more of the resources from PMI. So I put links to the resources that I've mentioned today in the show notes for this cast. So, Karla, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
Thanks so much, Andy.